guys, welcome to another Earthworks Hub live session. This is Sunday, the 30th of June, 2024. It's the end of financial year. Hopefully, a lot of you took away some of my advice from the last episode where we spoke about a pre-tax meeting and getting ready for tax time. Hopefully you guys have taken advantage of sitting with your accountant before tax time and then getting some things sorted. So if you haven't, make sure you go back and listen to my last episode where I gave a few tips about getting ready for tax. As usual, I want to thank my sponsors. So the Earthworks Hub sponsors are Network Finance, Bole Group, Melbourne Tractors, Spartan Machinery, Nexgen Landscapes, and JR Safety Co. So make sure you use these guys for anything that you require. And the really good news is I have a couple of new sponsors and we're just doing all the paperwork at the moment, and you'll see those up probably by the next session, I reckon. So I want to thank those guys too, and you know who you are, but I can't announce anything until it's all complete. But no, thank you all for joining tonight again. It's a frosty Sunday evening in Melbourne. Today was really cold, rainy. I'm not really enjoying this weather, but what can you do? It happens, yeah. Especially down in Melbourne, it's quite cold and frosty, man. So end of financial year. This week, I'll run through my week as usual before I hit the topic, which you do not want to miss. But this week I worked on mainly my own project, which is Project Spalding. Everyone's been following me on that. That is the warehouse that I'm building. This week we had all the car park area concreted, and that's all basically dried now and ready to go. So we're going to start prepping for the curb there now, and then that's what we'll get. The crossover done next, curb, and then hopefully we can start doing the fencing at the front, the fencing on the sides, which will be just color bond, and then the proper steel gates at the front that can slide in and out, and they're going to be automatic as well. So a bit of work to go there. And I've also organized the chippy for this week. So the chippy, plasterer, all that stuff's going to be happening this week internally. So look forward to a few more of those videos coming up. Mainly they'll probably be the internal stuff. Okay, I also did some posts where I did a interview with Diggerlid. So hopefully you guys all got to listen to that episode. So that's out on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcast. So you can go in and watch those episodes there and all the other episodes. But I did an interview with Diggerlid. The Diggerlid boys, amazing guys, funny guys, two brothers that have started that company, and they're basically providing weatherproof covers for open cab machines, but since then they've also expanded into all other sorts of accessories for your machines. So make sure you listen to that episode. I also did some posts where they announced a new HQ, so they've got a new warehouse where they're operating out of, and I think they also did some videos this week about that. So I got to do a little bit of a tour through their new warehouse. So good luck to the guys. They're doing really, really well. Awesome bunch of guys and awesome business. And I also did a post about my website. So if you don't know, hopefully you all know, but if you don't know, you can advertise your business on earthworkshub.com.au, because if you face it, who else knows about your business? Sometimes we always go, oh, there's no work, no one's calling, no one's doing this. But if you haven't advertised, word of mouth is always the best way, I suppose. But if you haven't advertised or given it a bit of a go of getting your name out there and getting some exposure, then you're only limiting yourself. So go to earthworkshub.com.au. You can advertise your business on there. There's different packages and that. And after the financial year, they are going to be going up. So make sure if you do want to do it, you've got tonight to go before we actually put up the pricing. So I'm not going to do it tomorrow. So you've still got a few days before I go up there and fix it all. But there's going to be a price hike on all those packages for listing. So if you want to take advantage of the current prices, go on there now. The topic. I think it's time to go on to my topic before I go any further. I noticed a couple of people writing messages, and sorry I didn't read them because I've been busy talking. Project updates I just did, current jobs. So I also went back, sorry, before I go on to the topic, I did go back to the basement job, and for a day only in the 5-tonner, and I had to backfill around the swimming pool area. So that was a bit of a challenge. We had all like Rio bars and stuff coming up out of the ground, all the starter bars and that. I had to knock some of those down, bend them, go over them. And I actually haven't posted any videos of that. I probably, I actually forgot all about it, but I will be posting those up when I get a chance. There we go. Right, who is keen to hear about this topic? I'm sure this will relate to a lot of guys that are owner operators, even operators. I suppose I think it's wise to know and understand parts of a machine or equipment that you're working on. So today's topic is about maintenance, and basically I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of doing it yourself as opposed to getting a mechanic or a professional to come in and do it. So make sure you guys are putting in some input on this as well. So I'm happy to take some input, but I will go through my points and then you can feel free to add as well. But yeah, doing it yourself versus a mechanic. And then after, I'm going to talk about what type of mechanic you use and the pros and cons between using a private mechanic, just like a one-man band, or like a dealership mechanic where they specifically just focus on their machines or their equipment. So, like I said earlier, though, I think if you're an owner operator or an operator on machines, it is wise to at least learn the basics of how that machine works or how it operates. So, just knowing how to do basic oil filter changes, engine oil changes, hydraulic oil or filter oil, hydraulic oil and filters, fuel filters, how they work, greasing your machine, all that sort of stuff. I think it's wise to know that anyway. And if you don't know, at least try and learn a bit about it, because it can definitely help you. And then as I go through some of the points, you'll understand why I say that. And it's something that I did. I had to learn. I knew a little bit about engines and stuff from mucking around with cars and stuff like that previous to starting this business. But after I started the business, I actually learned a lot more and forced myself to learn a lot more so that I could do a lot more things myself. And then I learned I had to buy a lot more tools as well and have them handy. So just make sure that you do have some tools if you are going to do things on your own. Anyway, so the pros, let's go through the pros first for doing it on your own. So if you're going to do it on your own, the pros are that you get to learn about your equipment. So you get to learn about your equipment, you get to understand any strange noises while you're operating, any unusual smells, if you notice some leaks coming out from somewhere. So if you're a little bit more mechanically minded, you'll start to look out for these things, yeah? So what I think is that a good pro is that you get to learn your machine. And also the another pro is that the timing, like you can actually do the servicing after hours, or you can do it on weekends where it's not going to affect your work hours during the week and your income. So, the good thing about being able to do it yourself is you can say, you know what, I'm going to allocate some time after work to do it, or I'm going to allocate a Saturday or a Sunday. Also, if you do have unexpected rain days or days where work gets cancelled, at least if you know how to do the servicing and know how to do some maintenance, you can do that on those days and make sure you get your best out of it. I used to do that for all my operators. If we had a day where we got rained off, we go back to the yard and we do some maintenance on the machines. And that was also good because the guys kept doing things. It was bit more productive rather than just sending them home. And you don't have those labor costs, so you can save yourself some labor costs. I know we can say, well, time is money, so whether you do it yourself or with a mechanic, at least you don't have to pay yourself the money. Whereas a mechanic, you're going to have to physically fork that money out. So you're making a bit of a saving there. And like I said, there's no labor costs. So you're not physically coming up with the money. You're just losing a bit of time. There's no disposal or environmental costs. So a lot of times when you get your machine serviced, you'll get charged an environmental or disposal cost for them to get rid of the oil and all the parts and stuff. Whereas if you do it yourself, you can just go to the local tip and they'll usually take the oil on that for free. So it saves you that cost. As well as if you buy the parts yourself, so all the filters and timing belts and fan belts and whatever, if you buy all that stuff yourself, you won't get a markup on there. So sometimes mechanics might mark those up, put a little bit of a profit on top of those parts and bits So that's the other thing. Um, and also with that cost saving of not actually paying more for the parts and not having to pay the mechanic, you can probably afford to do some servicing a bit more often than you have to. So you might be able to change your hydraulic oil filters a bit more often, or your engine oil filters a bit more often, because you're sort of saving a bit of money by not going to a mechanic. So there's some things there. And if you do know how to do it yourself, you don't have to wait for the mechanic. So if you have like a breakdown and you've already got tools on board, because most of us probably have a ute with a toolbox on there and stuff. If you've got the tools there and you have the knowledge, you can actually fix that yourself very quickly, unless you need like a specific part. But even then, you can quickly drive off, come back, put the part on, get it fitted, get it going, and then keep working. So you've got less downtime. Um, so that's all the pros that come with doing it yourself. But there are some negatives and some cons. So one is that obviously you might have limited knowledge. So, like for instance, myself, I can't do certain things. I can do it up to a certain level, so I can change filters and oil and stuff myself. But if it starts becoming a bit more technical, like you got to do seals and torque things to a certain amount, that I can't. That starts to get a bit out of my reach. So that's where one of the negatives of doing it yourself could be that you're sort of a bit limited compared to a mechanic. Also, you may not have all the required tools. So, how many times have you gone to go do something on your machine, or even on your car, and you haven't got those spanners that are on like an angle where you can get in there and like turn them? I've bought those little spanners that they actually fold, and you can get them in really tight spots. Or you haven't had a torque wrench, so you got to torque bolts and things to a certain torque, and you don't have a torque wrench, or you need breaker bars. So especially on big machines like on 20 tonners and dozers and graders, you got massive bolts. You can't just undo those with a little simple ratchet. You need to actually have a whole breaker bar and put a bit of oomph into it. So you may not have those, even hex keys, or I don't know, extra large sockets. So I know all those little standard socket sets that you get from like little tool shops don't have big size 32, 72, 60 mil sockets. That they only go up to a certain amount. So then you got to have all the proper large and deep sockets. So there's all the things that are cons, as well as, like I said earlier, you might be able to do it out of hours instead of getting the mechanic to do it during hours, but you are going to be dipping into your family time, in your free time. So, what I mean, you might be working all day, then you got to spend hours doing a service, and then or a Saturday where you could be out with your family doing other stuff. So there's a little bit of a work-life balance issue there. So, you might be saving money by not paying a mechanic, but then you're losing time at home. So that's one of the cons. And the worst thing is, and I think we've all been there, is if you break something while you're doing it, then you're stuffed, because you got to try and see if you can quickly find parts somewhere. Or if you thread something, when you cross thread like the top of a bolt, or if you thread inside the actual thread part, you cross thread it, and then you haven't got a threading tool to rethread it and stuff, you're going to be buggered. So that's some of the negatives of doing it by yourself. So I'll move on to actually using a proper mechanic, whether you use a private mechanic or a dealership mechanic. Some of the pros are that they'll have more thorough knowledge of that machine or that equipment. So they should have it. I've got to question some guys, but they should know that machine or a bit more about mechanics than you do. So they'll have a bit more experience and be able to fix something a lot quicker and a bit more efficient. And they should have all the special tools. So like I said, if you don't have special tools, your mechanic should already have them, and they should already have all the tools that they require for that job, like special hex keys and stuff like that, torque wrenches. So that's one of the pros of getting a mechanic to do it. So they'll have all the tools, they'll have a lot more knowledge, and especially if they know a certain brand, they'll be better at it than yourself. They'll be quicker, so a lot of times they'll be able to multitask. So I've seen mechanics that I've had, they'll come in like drain the oil for the engine, for the hydraulics, they'll drain the fuel all at once, and then they'll be changing filters on one when the other one's drained. And they do it all in like a quick sequence. They can multitask because they do it so often. They know how to do it a lot quicker. And they'll have little suction pumps to suck out all the all the, like for instance, the gear oil and things like that, and to actually pump it back in. Whereas we use just like the 4 litre bottles that they come in and try and tip it in, and it takes ages. Whereas they just use a pump it in, and they're done. So they already know exactly how many liters to go in. So that's where they'll be a lot quicker at doing the maintenance than what we would be. They might be able to fix more complicated problems. So like I said, I can do up to a certain level, and a lot of guys probably can do up to a certain level, but they will know a lot more. Like they'll know how to change seals and rebuild a pump and do some other things that we probably don't know. And that's where they'll come in handy. So I've got a couple of comments here, which I skipped, sorry. Jack Healy is saying there's no such thing as a 5-minute job when you're fixing stuff. That's exactly right. And Jenna Troy saying if software updates are needed, sometimes you need someone like a dealership mechanic to come out and actually upgrade the software. Yeah, exactly right. So there's some things that we can't do. That's where we're limited a little bit with doing it ourselves. So that's all the pros to... Oh, yeah, sorry. And another pro, I forgot one, is a mechanic will hopefully have contacts out there that they can recommend. So, for example, if you get a mechanic and while he's working on your machine, he discovers that there's a hydraulic hose that's no good, hopefully he'll know someone that's a hydraulic hose doctor or something and get him to come out and fix it, or can quickly dash out and go get it fixed and come back. Whereas if you're doing it yourself, you won't have those contacts. You just start ringing around, asking who else can help, and it just starts to take more and more time. And yeah, bless those, is saying the other things, they might notice other things that are faulty that we don't know. So while they're there repairing stuff, the mechanic might hear something else or realize that something else is causing that problem. So yeah, like they might say, the batteries are failing because the alternator's not working or something, whereas we just change the battery and then it happens again. So that's some of the pros to having a mechanic. The cons though are that if you break down, you've got to wait for that mechanic to come out. So you might have a long downtime. They might say, look, I'm booked out today. I can't come there till in 2 days' time. So then you're stuffed because your machine's out for 2 days. And if you don't know how to do it yourself, you're just sitting there waiting for them. So that can be that can be a big detriment to your income, and to your customer might turn around and go, I can't wait 2 days. We're going to get somebody else. So that's some of the cons about having a mechanic. The other one is they might be more expensive. So obviously, you're going to have to pay them the labor. You're going to have to pay them for markup on parts that they buy and oils and things. So it's going to be obviously more expensive to have a mechanic than doing it yourself. And they can usually only come during work hours. That's the other thing. So they might say, oh, I can't get there for 2 days because they can only get there during work hours. And then what that means is you've got downtime waiting, but also when they do turn up, and Mr. Healy said that in our interview, that if they come during the day, that means your machine's down and it's not working. So it may not be working for 4 hours while they're servicing it. That's 4 hours of income you're not getting because your customer's not going to pay you hourly rate while your machine's down. So that's the other thing. It can cost you a lot more of downtime and no income. And the other thing is, how do you know the mechanic is not taking his time? So, I mean, I'm not saying that they do that, but they might add a few extra hours on, or, like take a little bit longer, or just put up, a lot more of a cost on the parts and things. So I don't know. How do you know they're not doing that? That's the other thing. So that's a con with having a mechanic. So hopefully you guys are happy with this topic so far. So I'm about to change it up a bit. I'm going to say now, just say we do end up calling a mechanic to come and fix our equipment. You've got a choice now. Do you call the private little guy that comes and turns up in his ute or his van or a little truck, or do you call a dealership? So you've got two choices there. Let's look at the difference between the two. So I'll talk about the little private guy first. And there's pros and cons to both as well. So some of them sort of overlap, but there are pros and cons. So I suppose the private guy might be a little bit cheaper than the dealership, because the dealership's obviously going to charge a bit of a premium because they understand that machine particularly. So, your mechanic might be a little bit cheaper. So that's the good thing. And the other thing is that your mechanic might be willing to work on different brands. So if you've got like one Cat machine, one Hitachi, one Kubota, your mechanic, if he's just a regular little private guy, he'll be happy to come there and work on all three. He's not biased, so he'll come in there and work on all of them at once. So that way you're saving costs because you're not calling a mechanic for this machine, a different mechanic for that one. He's already there. He'll just service all three while he's there, and it's done. And then the Blessos is saying, yeah, dealerships, it also depends who they send. So I'll get to that in a second. And then the other thing is a smaller mechanic might say, oh, you know what, I can come and help you out after hours, or I can come on a Saturday and help you. So they might be a little bit more flexible because they're not tied into set hours, whereas some dealerships might be. But there are some negatives to having a little private mechanic. So one is they may have limited knowledge across all different brands. So they may only know one particular brand. You know what I mean? Or they might only know how to work on an excavator, but not on a posi track, or, on the dozer, but not a grader. So that's the other thing. They might only be limited to knowing one type of equipment or one type of brand. The other one is they might be overbooked. So if you've got a little private guy, you might need to wait a long time for him to have an opening to come and give you a service. And you got to pre-book like weeks in advance or something. And or the other one is if you've got a breakdown, they might already have a busy schedule, so they don't have extra workers or a fleet of guys working for them that they can send off to come and help you out in an urgent situation. So that's one of the cons. And they may not have all the special tools, so they might be limited with some of the tools that they have. Like they'll probably have more tools than we would ourselves, but they may not. It doesn't mean anything. They could be just starting out. They might not have enough funds to buy all of them, or that brand might have its own special tool that it needs and they don't have it. The other one is their work may not be covered by warranty. So if you've got a machine that's under warranty, you've got to be careful, because if you use a private guy and he doesn't use all that brand filters and oils that brand prefers, your machine may not be covered under warranty anymore. So that's what you got to be careful of as well. And sometimes they might forget stuff. So if they're so busy, and I've had this happen, I've had mechanics work on my machines, and because they're so busy and they're in a rush, they forget things. They forget to tighten bolts, they forget to put parts on, or they leave something off because they're in a rush to get out. So it can happen. It can happen with these smaller mechanics. You've got to be really, really careful. So that's some of the cons with a private mechanic. So let's move on to dealerships. So there are some pros to having a dealership, and one is that they'll have specific knowledge on that machine or the equipment that you're using. And the plumbing company is saying you should always use genuine parts. There you go. So that's some good advice there. So if you get someone from the dealership, more than likely they're going to be a professional or an expert in that machine, and they've had all the internal training on what to do there. So that's one of the very, very big pros. They also might give you a discount on parts. So sometimes if you're, for example, with Cat might give you some discounts on parts because you've bought their machine from that same dealership. So you might get parts a bit cheaper. And they've got a larger fleet of mechanics usually. So like I was saying earlier, if you need someone out urgently, a dealership will usually have a lot more people available. So they'll be able to say, you know what, we'll send Joe Blow out to come and fix your machine today. Or if you're booking in, you might not have to book so far in advance because they've got a bigger fleet of mechanics. So that's where they can be a lot more helpful, and they'll have the parts on hand usually. So a lot of times they'll have regular parts, like all your little filters and oils and stuff. They'll have all that on board already. Whereas sometimes if you have a private mechanic, he doesn't know exactly what part you need or what oil you use. So he'll have to come in, get your machine, take it all apart, then go and get the parts and come back, and that's all encroaching in the time. You know what I mean? So you're paying for that time while they're off going to buy parts. But there are some negatives to having a dealership mechanic working on your stuff. And then these are, so they might send you an apprentice, or you might be when your machine's getting fixed on their site, so you take it into to the dealership, they might have an apprentice working on there. So you don't know always who you're going to get. So it's not so personable. You know what I mean? So you don't get to know the mechanic. You don't know who's going to be working on your machine. So the apprentice might leave things off. And I've had that happen too. So they've left bolts off. For instance, they left a couple of bolts off one of the mufflers on my posi track. Eventually that muffler was bounced around so much it actually cracked, and it caused a massive headache with the machine. And that was because the apprentice forgot to put a couple of bolts in. The other thing is though, like I was saying, you don't have that personable relationship with dealership mechanics usually, unless they've got a smaller fleet. But if they've got a big fleet, the guy they send out doesn't know the history of your machine personally. So whereas if I have a small mechanic, he'll know what he did last time on the machine, and he'll remember like, oh yeah, that's right, I had to do this last time, so that's why this might be happening. You know what I mean? They'll know your machine a bit more personally. Whereas if it's a fleet or a dealership, they'll just send out random mechanics. So you don't know who you're going to get. They don't know the history of your machine, what's happened to it, unless they have a sheet to read off. But even then, they don't know your machine and what work you do and why it could be a problem. What you're doing might be causing it or whatever. What conditions you're working in. So that could be a negative. And then sometimes they'll try and on-sell products to you. So when you take your car in somewhere, they'll try and on-sell little things like, you got to get an aircon freshener put through your aircon filters, or I don't know, all these little flushing. We're going to flush it with this and that. They try and on-sell a bit. So that's what dealerships are taught to do sometimes. Their service department might get, some sort of commissions for on-selling. So you got to be careful. They're not selling you something that you probably don't really need. And then they're expensive. Their rates may be a bit more expensive. So an hourly rate from a dealership might be a little bit more than your regular mechanic that's working on his own. And the other thing is, if you do have machines, multiple branded machines or equipment, if you get a dealership mechanic to come, they might only know how to work on their machinery or only be allowed to work on their machinery. So they might say, we can't, I'm a Caterpillar dealership mechanic. I'm not allowed to work on your Hitachi, or not allowed to work on your Kubota. So that's one of the negatives of having a dealership mechanic as well. Whereas, your regular mechanic that works on his own, he'll be able to work across multiple machines. Doesn't matter about brand, unless it's something more specific. So that is the topic for this evening. I did see a couple of other people asking questions, which I'll get to in a minute. So that we'll go on to your topics in a sec. But I hope I've answered some questions there for people. If you've ever been wondering about the difference between doing servicing yourself or getting a mechanic to do it, my opinion, if people said to me like, oh, how would you do it? If I had a brand new machine that I just bought and it's got like, a 3-year warranty now, I'd probably take it back and use the dealer as much as I can. If I had a secondhand machine or a couple of secondhand machines, then I'd probably get like a regular little private mechanic that will come out, usually a mobile mechanic. And I do that at the moment. I do have a private little mechanic that comes out, and then I get him to do 2 or 3 machine services at once. So sometimes one of my machines might be at just before the actual service is due or just past, and then I just sort of try and time it that they're still very close, and then just get 2 or 3 machines done at once. Unless they're like way apart, then he's going to have to come back. But then it saves, like another call out fee and this and that. So it's hard to say. But dealerships are good too. Like a lot of times dealerships have saved me by coming out very, very quickly to fix things. Sometimes their mechanics, I have to even say, have been helpful and said, listen, if this part is what you're going to need, maybe best I'll just charge you the call out for coming out, but you go and buy that part and fit it yourself. It's a 2-second job. You'll save yourself a lot of money, and they've been helpful. So yeah, it all depends on your situation and the relationships you have. So I can't really say one's better than the other, but the points I raised hopefully will help you decide on how you want to do it. So what do most people do? While I'm looking through the questions, I want everyone to just think about, or just let me know what you guys do in your circumstances. So Jenna Troy is saying, Today's world dealers want you to complete oil sampling as part of warranty on new machines. Yeah, it's true. I actually got given a bunch of little bottles and said, can you give us a bit of that oil if you're going to do it yourself? Give us a bit of a sample and send it in. Otherwise, yeah, their mechanics will have to come and do a little oil sample, and then they send you like a report. So, look, I don't know if any of those reports that they've done have helped me, but I do have to admit, one of the reports came back and said there was a lot of metal fragments in the oil, and they found an issue with something. I can't remember which machine it was. What machine was that? I can't remember. I'll think about it. But one of the machines I remember I got back a report and it said they had little metal. They found metal in the sample, and then not long after that, it might have been the swing motor. Might have been the swing motor oil, and then not long after that, the swing motor failed on me. So there you go. And then they found that it was actually broken. One of the swing gears had broken or cracked. Jack Healy is saying do as much as possible yourself. And yeah, I have to agree a bit. It's good to do as much as you can yourself because it is a cost saving, but at the same time, you get to learn your machines. You get to learn how your machine works. And then over time, like I said earlier, you'll get to understand, unusual smells, like something will be like burning, like you'll smell oil or you'll smell something. And I mean, I could smell gear oil when it starts to get really old. So if you've got a posi track and you're tracking around a lot, if you smell near the drive motors, you'll be able to smell the gear oil, and you'll smell when it gets really old and dirty. So just keep an eye out, and it will teach you that sort of stuff when you do it yourself. Actually, I've got a funny story for you. I love my storytelling. And I hope you guys liked my story the other day about chasing those guys that stole my machine. But a good story, and this is going to be a bit of advice for you. Speaking of gear oil, I had this silly idea because I used to do all the servicing myself at one stage. I drained out some old gear oil from a drive motor. I think it was from one of my 5-tonners. And I thought, you know what? I wonder if this would be good because I didn't know what to do with the oil. I had it and I was like, I can't be bothered going to the tip. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to tip it in the garden bed over the weeds. And I said, hopefully it will kill the weeds. And I went around the whole backyard and just tipped a bit of gear oil over all the weeds in the backyard. And they were like in between pebbles and things in the garden beds. And that gear oil did nothing to start with. It did nothing at all, man. Those weeds just kept growing. 2, it made the worst smell in the backyard. My wife used to yell at me because every time she went out to put washing on the line, it would all smell like gear oil. The gear oil smell was that strong, and it left a layer of oil, thick oil, over all the pebbles and stuff. I had to actually go, and after a few months, I gave up and I said, I have to go dig it all out. I went and actually dug all the pebbles out and replaced all the pebbles with new ones. Never, ever, don't try and use gear oil as a weed killer. It does not work. They actually just kept growing, probably actually helped them. So a bit of advice for you. Blesso's Earthworks is saying, a good way to learn is to read the manual for the machine front to back. Yeah. Hey, how many of you, and I'm one of them, I have to admit, get all the manuals when you buy the machines, just put them in the little folder and put them away and never look at them. I have to admit, I've never looked at any of these. I'll tell you what. Yeah, I think most of us will probably be in the same boat. Oh, we got Dirt and All podcast. Thanks for joining. There you go, Dirt and All podcast. Are you still on or have you gone? Oh, it might have gone. But thank you for joining as well. Right, guys. So I'm going to open it up to you as well. Let me try and scroll back a little bit and see some of these questions. Actually, there was one right at the start, and I promised him I'm going to go back to it. So let me see. What's a good size machine? So that was for Reese Close. What's a good size machine to start out with? I think that all depends on what type of work you're going to do, Reese. So I did say a while back, somebody was asking the best machine for starting out with on civil sites, and I said a 13.5 will do the best job, I reckon, with all the bells and whistles. But that is mainly if you're on there like civil or subdivisions. I think if you're doing like landscaping, maybe a 1.7 tonner would be the best, especially when you're starting out. It's not overly expensive. You can easily move it around without buying a truck. So you can have a trailer and move it around. You can get into backyards. You can do all sorts of stuff with it. That's where I think maybe something like that would be good. Or maybe like a Bobcat or a Posi track, so you can do a range of things. And if you get a small enough one, you can just put it on the trailer until you work your way around and learn how to operate it properly. And then you can maybe look at getting something bigger than getting yourself a truck and doing other stuff. So that would be my advice for that. JPG Excavations, here we go. Do you prefer to keep your machines for as long as possible or trade in often? That is a question that I ask myself often. And the same thing goes with cars. I've got this problem at the moment where I've got a 10-year-old car, hasn't cost me that much. It's all paid off. In the back of my head, I would love to have like a brand new Ranger or brand, Raptor or something, or even a Chev Silverado or one of those brand new nice Utes. And then I'm battling with myself thinking, I've got this car, it cost me nothing. Hasn't well, it did give me some grief recently. I did change the head on it. But even that $5,000 that I spent on it over 10 years, that's the biggest money I've ever spent on it. And it still does everything. I still drive it around, forward driving, take it to work every day. And I think to myself, why change it? Why go and upgrade and put myself back into more debt and worry about repayments for a car just to have this nicer ute? But then I hear the opposite end where people say, you know what, you're better off having a new car. Or I'm talking about cars here, but the same thing goes for machines. You're better off having a new car where it's not going to break down. If you get it on lease, you can incorporate all those costs into the lease. You're getting a tax deduction on all those repayments. So why not enjoy it? And then after 3 years, just trade it in and get another one and keep going. So yes, I do. I do have that battle in my head all the time. And the same thing goes with machines. Like I had the last Posi track I had, bought in 2017 and had that all until recently. And it was a battle in my head thinking, do I go get a new one? And actually there was a point where I was going to upgrade it, but that was still it might have been like after maybe 5-6 years. And I was just thinking about trading it in, and then something happened. I think we blew the head on it or something. So then it cost me mega bucks to fix the head. And then I thought, well, I might as well keep it now after spending all that money on it and just keep it as long as possible. And I think, you know what, that thing's probably still going hard. And I don't know, I question whether it's worth upgrading every few years. I don't know. I know some guys that do that. And I just feel like then you constantly have to keep making those repayments. Whereas if you have it paid off, you don't have to worry about that machine constantly working to making money again to cover itself. I don't know. What does everyone else think? What do you think, JPG? I always have that battle in my head. Yeah, I don't fully know which way is better. I don't fully understand if you're better off doing one way or the other. So Jenna Troy says he's to trade at the end of warranty. And that's what people say, yeah. Just keep it for 3 years. As soon as the warranty ends, trade it in, because after 3 years, apparently the machines they still hold enough value for you to be able to trade them in and get something new. So that's why a lot of people say that. Goddings is saying, yeah, come check out a Kubota. Here we go. I missed a couple of questions there, sorry, while I was answering that one. Let me just scroll back a little bit on TikTok as well, and I'll answer some of these questions. How are we going with time? Doing all right? 8:40, yeah, not bad, not bad. Let's have a look. At Built for Adventure is saying at work exploration, all maintenance is done by ourselves. There you go, very good. Adam was asking any companies that are good to work for in Melbourne. They just got their tickets. I think, Adam, just a quick answer to your one. It's hard to nominate one or two companies. It depends what type of work you want to do. Like if you want to do landscaping, sometimes I think it's better to just work for a smaller landscaper, because then you'll get experience doing a bit of everything. So you won't get just like lumbered with doing the basic jobs, like go and sweep for the first 6 months while you're working there. A smaller company won't afford for you to do that. They'll be just like, yep, go in there, jump in the machine, go do that, dig this, Lift these sleepers in, do that. Whereas, yeah, if I'm talking about landscaping in general, but if you're working for a smaller company, you'll probably get experience doing things a lot quicker. So if you can find like a local little company, just join those guys. If you want to just specifically operate machines, then you might be better off going into a civil company, starting as a labourer, which you always say, and then work your way up into the machine. And that's the same for Dipsy and friends, same answer. Daniel, are you looking for workers? No, I am not. The plumbing company is saying just take it to Pertec. I think he's talking about when I was talking about mechanics having hydraulic hose guys that they use. And Rigs on Rigs is saying, they're looking for a 1.7 ton excavator. He needs some pointers and where to buy. That's why Goddings was saying yes. Rigs on Rigs. 1.7 tonner. Look, most brands do make 1.7s now. It all depends on what sort of money you're looking at spending. And it's probably good to look at your location and who your dealers are around you, because if you are going to use dealerships, you probably want to get someone that's close by, so that if you do need repairs or you need to take it in to get serviced or whatever, it's closer. And then if you do need to quickly get parts, you can always go in there. Not to say dealers that are further out can't supply or help as much, but it probably would be a bigger advantage if you've got someone close by. But as Goddings has said there, they do have a good 1.7 tonner. I used to have one. Fantastic machine, very, very powerful, and can get the jobs done. Like I remember turning up on site with a little 1.7 and people would look at me and go, oh God, here we go. It's going to take forever. And then when they see it, the little Kubota going, they actually get surprised. Over here, JPG says they believe if it's looked after by the owner, it will last longer, and it shouldn't need to be upgraded as often. Yeah, and that's another thing, yeah. I think the question about how often to change over machines also depends on how big your fleet is. So if you've got, a fleet of like 20 machines and 20 operators, you might find that it's better for you to just keep trading machines in every few years, because your operators may not be looking after it as good as you would yourself. So I've seen machines, like I used a Komatsu 13 tonner the other day from the Bole Group, and that thing had 6,500 hours on it. And when I sat in it, it did not feel like a 6,000 hour machine. Nothing was loose on it. All the bushes and pins and that were still pretty tight. Nice and smooth. The hydraulics and everything was still good. So it all depends on who's in that machine, maybe how big your fleet is, and if it's your own machine, how well you maintain it. So, and I've seen guys that have their own machine are actually sometimes rougher than their workers. So I don't know if that's true, but I have to admit, sometimes I've done things and thought, wow, if my worker was doing that, I'd tell him off. Like sometimes I've seen like a rock on the ground or a bit of concrete and then hit it with the bucket a couple of times to try and break it to save me going out and getting the hammer. Whereas if my operator was doing that, I'd be going crazy. So sometimes I've seen owner operators worse on their machines than if they had operators on there, if that makes sense. What else we got here, guys? So another question: tips on digger operating. So Noah Mack is asking for tips. One, I would say go and see my videos, just so I don't spend too much time on that. But go and watch some of my videos on YouTube. So make sure you go to YouTube for Earthworks Hub. And of course, make sure you subscribe and put the little alarm button on so that you get notified when new videos come up. But depends on what we're talking about. So if you're talking about trimming, I'll give you a quick tip on trimming. If you've got a mud bucket on and you've got to level something off, start by drawing back with the mud bucket, like cutting back with the mud bucket to the level that you need. Then move over half a bucket across the new part that you haven't dug yet and leave half the bucket on the part you just did. And then put the bucket down or the cutting blade down to the what you just cut level. And then as you pull back, follow that level, and then the new section will be cut to the same level, if that makes sense. Hopefully I explained that. But that's one quick one. So don't go full buckets from left to right. Don't go a full bucket width to start off to dig the new section. Keep a little bit of your mud bucket halfway or a quarter of the way over the section you just dug. So I don't know, that's a quick one. If you're digging with a trenching bucket or a GP bucket with teeth and you're doing a trench, to make sure you line yourself up, put your arm fully extended out, and then put the tooth, like the center tooth on. So if you're digging, if your line is marked to the center of the trench, put the center of the tooth or the center tooth or center of the bucket on there, lift the bucket off the ground, and then slowly drag it in towards yourself without touching the ground. So just above the ground level, and don't use your left or right swing. You should be able to pull back, and that tooth should follow that mark to precisely where just before it touches your cab. So then you're in line, and then you can put your bucket out forward again and start digging and just pulling back. If you have to swing left or right as you're bringing that bucket towards yourself, that means that you're not in line. Your boom is not in line with the line mark. So then you got to reset yourself and either offset the boom a bit or move the machine left or right, and then do it again. Put your bucket all the way out, line the tooth up on the line mark or the paint mark, lift it up and then in the air, lift it up in the air, bring it back towards yourself, and your bucket should follow that line. So that means that you're in line. So hopefully that makes sense. That's just a quick answer for your question. Noel Mac, yeah, he's saying sweet. No worries, that's good to know. Harvey Milk wants to see my son's Lego set. Yes, I did have you. You asked me that a few weeks ago, didn't you? I did promise that. Let me ask him. I'll have to ask him if he's happy for me to do that. Give me 1 sec. You know what I'll do? Let me answer a couple more, and I'll get back to that one. Give me 1 sec. Riggs on Riggs, you're saying I'm a recently qualified landscaper, just looking to start up some weekend work. There you go. Riggs on Riggs, if you want to do that as an operator, you're saying on weekends, or if you want to if you've got an actual business, make sure you advertise it on Earthworks Hub for starters to try and get some work. But also, put it out there, guys. Looks like Riggs on Riggs is doing landscaping. So if anyone needs a landscaper or some landscaping work or something coming up, make sure you contact Riggs on Riggs. Also, make sure you join the Facebook group, Earthworks Hub, and advertise yourself on there. Just tell everyone what you do, and if you've got some work coming up, or if anyone's got any work coming up, they'll call you. So that is that, and then let me go. So I am jumping between TikTok and Instagram here. All right. Who else wants to see my son's Lego collection? I can unclip the phones and start walking, but you might lose me on the microphone. So if you don't mind that, I can do it. I'll have to walk around and show you. Is everybody else happy for me to do that? Any more questions before I move on? Before I do that, so you know what I'll do? I'll actually end the session by going and doing a quick walk and showing all the Lego collection. I did ask him the other day and he said he was all right, but I think I just wanted to see that he's not going to be like his room is in the mess or something. I'll ask him in a second. What I'll do, I'll disconnect the phones in a sec and I'll actually do a quick walk around of the studio so you can see what I've got in the background, because a lot of people have actually asked me what's in the background, because sometimes I've got my head in the way. So I'll make sure you can see past my noggin, and then make sure if you want to buy some merch, you go on to the shop on earthworkshub.com.au. You can order yourself hoodies and t-shirts. Some of them have got sponsors on there, some don't. So if you don't want to have all the sponsors, you can get ones without them. Make sure that you do advertise yourself on earthworkshub.com.au. Put your business on there. So you don't have to just be an excavation company. It can be anything to do with construction or earthworks. You'll see a whole bunch of categories. If you fit in one of those categories, or if you don't, and you think there's a category missing, let me know and I'll make a new one so I can add you in there. And also go on to YouTube. Make sure that you subscribe. Follow me on there. Spotify for all the podcasts. Apple, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. So make sure you go on all those socials. Follow me all on there. Share the shit out of it. Tell everyone about Earthworks Hub. And there will be having some really, really good podcasts coming up. So I've interviewed a few more people. They're going to come up very shortly. We're going to have a couple of group podcasts as well. So keep an eye out for that. And this week, or next week, I should say, I'm traveling and I'm going to be doing a bunch of stuff while I'm traveling to do with Earthworks Hub. I can't give away too much, but keep an eye out on what's going to be coming up next week. Okay, let me just unclip and I will go and take these phones off and start walking around. Give me 1 sec. All right, so this is the studio, in case you're all wondering. So that is how the studio looks. So I've got some of the sponsors' hats, some of the hats that I've gotten from expos, from site visits. So that's all the collection there. That's my workspace where I actually do most of my work. Up here, I've got these beers were given to me by JR Safety Co. So they actually went into a collab with a local brewery. Can you guys hear me? Hopefully everyone can still hear me. Here is just some of the merch that I've picked up. Some of my cigars that I enjoy. There you go. That's another truck that I did out of one of those little... my son actually did it, but that was out of those little wooden jigsaw puzzle things. Melbourne Tractors gave me this once. E&BE. So Chuka Moama, Bobcat Excavators. He was one of the guys on my podcasts. So Mr. Jack Healy. Got something there from Elite Attachments. Spartan Machinery gave me that fan. Norm Engineering, Topcon. That's the dumpy that I use. There's another machine from Melbourne Tractors. Command gave me a couple of goodies. And then Road. And then there's my little drone that I use. There's the calendar from Cat. There you go. I'll go in a second and show you guys some more. There's Elite Attachments gave me that rugby ball. Diggerlid gave me some stickers. A few more stickers from Diggerlid. And a couple of excavators there. And that's it. So, and then if you're wondering where I talk from, I'm basically talking from here. So there's my board. There's my job board. There's the little Roadcaster that I use. So that's the Roadcaster Pro 2. My computer I talk from, that's where I keep my phones. So people ask me sometimes where do I have the phones hooked up. That's my light box that I use. And that's just one of these Amarans here. That's the light that's in this box. There you go. All right, I'm going to go walk you through to the Lego. This is only some of it. So it's got all these ones here. So Harvey Milk, can you see that? He's still on. Then you've got these ones here. Then you've got a lot of Harry Potter stuff. There you go. You got the same ones. There you go. So there's all Harry Potter. And then he's got his car collection. So obviously he loves his little cars. So he's got a whole bunch of cars there. I think Mustangs are his favourite. So there's probably a lot more Mustangs there. But he's got a range of all these different Legos that he's built. Then down here you've got these ones. So these are the bigger ones. And then we've got some scattered around the house as well. But I won't go into that much detail. But then, yeah, you've got a whole bunch of these ones here.
And the Lego head.
And then the Lego head, yeah. So there you go. All right. So hopefully that's what you wanted to see. There you go. All right. Guys, I won't talk any further.